What's up, guys, and welcome back to another I'd Popcorn for That review. I'm Chris,
And I'm Nick.
and today we're here to talk about Oppenheimer. Looks like kind of the movie of the summer, the new Christopher Nolan movie, all-star cast. I can't get into all of them just yet, but Cillian Murphy, Only Blunt, Matt Damon, just a huge cast. Robert Downey Jr. Right off the bat, I mean, this movie is great, but I have a lot to say beyond that. So what do you think about it?
I thought it was fantastic. I would say it's definitely probably a masterpiece. I like depending on what else comes out this year, I doubt anything else will become. I feel like it's gonna win Best Picture and probably win a lot of other awards as well. I mean, I really liked Beau is Afraid, but it didn't do near as well in box office and everything. So
Right, right.
I feel like this one will probably win. We'll see what else comes out and everything, but I feel like this one's probably gonna win
Oh yeah,
a
right
lot of
now this seems
awards.
like it's gonna sweep
Yeah,
whenever the Oscars actually happen, right?
Yeah, and I mean I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was very it's a story that I didn't know like too much about like in depth. Like I knew about Los Alamos and Oak Ridge, uh,
Yeah.
but like all the scientists involved in it and everything. There's tons of actors in this movie, like you were saying, and it was cool to see a lot of people. And I feel like Josh Hartnett's I'm sure he's been doing a lot of stuff, and I haven't seen a lot of it recently, but I feel like he's having a moment with this and Black Mirror being like really great performances
Yeah, if he
recently.
wasn't having a moment before now, yeah, he certainly is not. He wasn't he on some I want to say there was like an M. Night Shyamalan TV show he was on not too long ago too, and I heard a little bit, a buzz about that, but
Uh,
just
well,
because he'd been out of this
it was
game for so long.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but that could be Black Mirror that you're thinking about because he was in an episode with Aaron Paul
I
that
thought it was a
was
little
really good.
further back, but I could be,
Yeah,
I'll
I
have
don't
to I'll
know,
have to look that up.
but overall,
Uh,
this I thought the movie was really good, and for being a 3-hour movie, it was like felt very fast paced the entire time. Like it never once felt like a slow moment, but I think that's just like how there were like multiple story timeline things happening.
we have ourselves an interesting situation here, which is that I do. I don't want to take away from how much I do like about this movie. I just have things that hold me back from loving it, which surprised me, and I didn't think I was gonna fall into this category. I kind of went into this super expecting this to be like my favorite movie of the year, 100%, and it is not mine actually.
Yeah, I don't know if it's
Um,
my favorite movie of the year either, but I did really like it, and I think it does suffer from a few things as well, which I'm sure are similar to what you think.
and I mean, we'll get into it. I just think there's so much good to say about it that it's hard to like spend a whole lot of time on the negatives.
Hmm.
But I do have negatives, which is just it surprises me a little bit. I haven't seen Dunkirk as far as like recent Christopher Nolan movies, so I am like a little bit behind on. But I've seen Tenet, and like most people, I loved The Prestige and The Dark Knight, obviously, and Memento is like a classic to me. He's got Interstellar. I love, even with its flaws that people have different degrees of.
Inception.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, Inception. I'm a little bit mixed about,
Okay.
but I do like it. It falls a little lower on the list for me, but yeah, this was an interesting one for me. Like the first thing I want to say is the sound design, score, cinematography are all like so amazing that you just kind of know you're watching something really special and that'll like stand the test of time and be talked about, and you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah, no.
uh, it feels like a real, without diminishing other movies, like it feels like real cinema, real movie.
Hmm. Yeah, the
But
score
I
was really good. Like throughout the entire thing, it felt like watching like an orchestra, like listening to an orchestra playing throughout
Score is
basically
amazing.
the whole movie. I mean,
Yeah, I mean Christopher Nolan does, use the soundtrack liberally throughout this, and it's like it's mostly a good thing. There's some moments for sure where it is like over the top of dialogue and it does make the dialogue a little hard to hear. Maybe it's the IMAX thing or whatever, but I didn't have as much problem with it as I did the problem hearing the dialogue in Tenet. So for the most part, I understood what was happening. Um, and uh, and the acting is obviously like it should go without saying, but like there's not really a whole. There's a couple of little moments that weren't super great as far as acting, but it's like really few and far between for the most part. Like Cillian Murphy, especially
Josh
Robert
Hartnett
Downey,
was really good, Robert Downey Jr. And there
Robert
were so
Downey
many
Jr.
actors to it. It kind of almost felt like too many because it's like you have all these actors and some of them have just like a few lines basically like Josh
It's
Peck is the guy who like just basically the key man and presses the button, and I think he has like you see him throughout the movie in various
mhm.
scenes, but then he has like one line or two lines in that, and then there's I can't remember his name, but I've seen him in a
Benny
ton of stuff.
Safdie,
Benny Safdie, yeah, that's who I'm thinking of.
Dane DeHaan is in this.
Yeah,
Um,
Casey Affleck,
um,
which I didn't know.
Rami Malek.
Yeah, I was actually wondering if he was even gonna have a line for a while.
Yeah, he shows up, but it's not very long. It's a weird. These are two movies that I never thought I would draw a parallel between, but in a way, it's a little like Asteroid City in that it's like this huge star-studded cast, but it's so huge that everybody just shows up for like a little while. For the most part, this is very much a movie about Oppenheimer,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think to me the second it felt like the second most amount of screen time was spent on Robert Downey Jr.'s character, and
Mm-hmm. Well, that was like the B plot to the movie, I guess, technically.
mhm. Yeah. So this whole thing is, it's super non-linear storyline and everything. So the whole thing is sort of like three stories happening simultaneously, where there's like it's the life of Oppenheimer and also these two like kind of interrogation slash trial feeling things. They're one's more of a what is it like? It's like his approval.
Yeah, it's his
Um,
it's Robert Downey Jr.'s had just been nominated to the cabinet of the president or of the United States and
Truman, yeah,
of Truman and what's it called? Yeah, I can't think of what
and
it is,
then
but yeah.
it's like Oppenheimer's security clearance is getting approved or denied, and that there's like a very interrogation feeling thing for them to not be police officers or it actually to be a courtroom or anything. It feels very like interrogation.
Mhm.
And then the other story is obviously, you know, Oppenheimer's life leading up to like from Oxford, Oxford, right?
Cambridge, I thought.
Cambridge, Cambridge up to the making of the bomb and beyond that, the dropping of the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki and everything. And I don't know if it's just, I think it's just a taste thing, honestly, but because there's plenty of non-linear storytelling devices that other directors use and even Nolan has used before that I just liked a little better than this. It's not
Mhm.
like a bad. It's not like bad. It's just like I don't know. I
It
don't know how I
jumped.
would have done it differently. It does jump around a lot, and there's no very long scenes. Like the camera's always flitting from one scene to the next
Yeah,
pretty
and that's
quickly.
why I say it was fast paced, is because like it's always just jumping to the next scene, kind of. There's no like real slow moments in between, and you're either in A, B, or C of what's happening, and then you jump from one to the other. And I don't think I really got confused by like the timeline jumping around and stuff necessarily, because I think they do a decent part with the black and white. You obviously know that's like the present, kind of with Robert Downey Jr. at least, but I maybe not because there is some
I
black and white where it's like kind of in the past as well.
I think what it actually is every time you're seeing color, it's the perspective of Oppenheimer,
Mm.
and every time it's black and white, it's Oppenheimer's not present in the situation. So it's like it's I think either that or it's specifically
Somebody else's retelling of what's happening.
well, it might be specifically Strauss's, which Robert Downey Jr. is a character named Strauss, but it might be specifically Strauss's point of view as black and white. But I don't think it's you can rely on the time thing because that was throwing me off. I thought it was based on time, and I think now
Hmm.
it's not. I think it's based on whose perspective it is.
That yeah, that does make sense.
But man, it's such a good movie. It's just that like there were things that just held me back from getting to. I feel like I'm grading on such a curve because of how good of a director Christopher Nolan is. That I just go in expecting so much that at the end of this I left a, a little disappointed. Not really. I mean, I would still give this a high score. It's a great movie.
Hmm.
You know, it's just so there's like I guess my two biggest things beyond that is I wouldn't have given like equal weight in the plot to the story of a kind of a bitter battle between these two men, um, over something kind of. It actually kind of starts with something kind of silly. It's just like Strauss's character is like publicly embarrassed by something that Oppenheimer says, and people are laughing at him and stuff, and that just sticks with him forever. And so everything beyond that, like that's kind of what turns him sort of into Oppenheimer's enemy.
Hmm.
And they give kind of equal weight to that, and like the the entering into the atomic age and the making of the atomic bomb and the first detonation of it and the dropping of it in Hiroshima and Nagasaki and all these people dying and dealing with the consequences and the existential crisis of what that means about the world and what his role was in putting the world into this new era. And if this is a, there's so much to dig into there that I'm not saying they shouldn't have spent any time on it. I just I would have spent like less time on that, and we could have even gotten even more. You don't even have to make the movie shorter or anything. It's fine that it's 3 hours, but but to spend a little more time on maybe his personal relationship with Emily Blunt, his wife's uh, character, or with his relationship with his kids, or there's other things you could have gotten into. And honestly, the other thing is, I don't know how about you, but we got to talk about this.
Okay.
I just don't love. I love Florence Pugh as an actress, and I think she's done great stuff. Some of my favorite movies, but I wish she had gotten a better script than this for this movie. Um, it just felt like I don't know how much we got out of that exactly, because he has this relationship with her that we don't really see enough of in kind of any of his relationships with women in this. It almost feels like we don't get enough of like any of the good that makes them fall in love or makes
Yeah.
them.
Well, and there's
So
like
it's
one
just.
bombshell that they kind of drop in you at towards the end of the movie that you're like, oh, he wasn't like you knew he was an adulterer a little bit with Florence Pugh, but I guess he had like this whole other relationship that they barely say anything about.
Hmm. Yeah, so you're finding out that he's kind of a womanizer in a certain way, but like when he says, we kind of slipped into spoiler territory a little bit. If there's such a thing as spoiling this, you should definitely go see this on a big screen for sure. But uh, there's kind of this thing of like, he's always bringing her flowers and whatever, and then anyway, eventually she like loses it on him and
Well, it
says,
definitely
you've got to stop this. What's that?
it definitely seemed like she was kind of mentally unstable a little bit.
For sure. Like that's kind of my problem, is like that was kind of her whole character.
Yeah.
This mentally unstable person who wants to keep having sex with Oppenheimer, and that's kind of all we know about her. And she like, I have no problem with like nudity or sex scenes or anything in movies for sure, but some of it felt a little like sort of unnecessary. Like I don't know why Florence Pugh has to be topless or fully naked for like 95% of all the screen time she has in the movie. It's kind of strange.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it accomplished a whole bunch. But anyway, I don't want to spend too much time on that. I just felt like we needed to know more about why he loves that woman, or why he can't get away from that woman, or whatever. Unless unless it's gonna mean more in the movie, and I didn't feel like it did a whole lot for the movie
Yeah,
for it to
I
be in
can
there
agree
as
with
much
that.
as it was. But all that to say, the middle of this, so the beginning like montage thing, which a lot of this movie feels a little montagey because there's the
Yeah.
soundtrack and the scene to scene to scene to scene and jumping timelines and everything. But the beginning montage where he's like, it's almost like he's haunted by quantum physics. Like he's like
You
got these
know,
visions of like particles in his.
it
What were you gonna
what
say?
it really reminded me of is like A Beautiful Mind, where John Nash just sees like all the formulas and stuff coming up in his head. But yeah, he's like haunted by just like seeing particles, and like he sees these like waves or like stuff circling, which is assuming was supposed to be like
Or
the
particle
atom
physics, or
particle physics. Yeah, it just kind of reminded me of that a little bit.
and sparkles and sparks coming out of a fire, and just a bunch of really cool visuals. And the music is, like I said, the amazing score. Like
Mm.
they really didn't have to go this hard in the score, and it really works. So that beginning is really great, and like the middle third of this movie, the middle hour of this movie is so good. And the Trinity test or whatever, where they do the testing of the bomb for the first time, and everybody gets to watch that, and they really did detonate this bomb. There's no CGI in this whole movie, which I've got to respect and give them props for that for sure. Um, but that scene's just shot so well, and the tension's built up so well, and the things they do with camera work as far as to show you like the feelings of anxiety and conflict that he's feeling inside of himself when he's giving these speeches. Like, he kind of has to give this like half-hearted speech, like, yeah, it's great that we dropped those bombs, and I wish we just hadn't gotten them done in time to do the Germans first or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like you can tell he doesn't really mean what he's saying. He's feeling very conflicted about it. Feels like he's got blood on his hands and everything. And like they make the background shake, and there's sound that goes along with it. And describing it doesn't do it justice, but all that is just handled really well and really puts you in the mind of Oppenheimer. And so I have a lot of praise for the middle third of this movie. I just
Mhm.
thought the um, I did feel the length. It did feel like 3 hours to me for sure. Like I thought, maybe the last like 25, 30 minutes, I was feeling a little bit like,
Yeah, I guess I kind of did too, but I had Barbie like right after it, and I knew I had to get to that, and I was
mm-hmm.
like, oh, is this movie gonna run over? And I think that made me feel it a little bit, but like I said, it was really fast paced, where I think the 3 hours, it was still good at 3 hours.
I mean, it certainly doesn't. The plot doesn't ever slow down. I mean, it almost doesn't quite give itself a whole lot of room to breathe. But for the most part, the thing is, all that to say, my negatives and positives aside, there's such good performances here from and also I don't want to not mention Matt Damon, because Matt
Oh yeah.
Damon was needed for the little tiny bit of comedy we got in this, because there really isn't a lot of lightheartedness here or comedy. And I think most of what we got came from Matt Damon, and I thought that was really good. He's one of the greats for a reason. And who else was? Kenneth Branagh is always good in everything, you
Yeah.
know.
Uh,
But he doesn't show up for long.
Gary Oldman was great in his little part.
Oh yeah, that was a really good scene actually, because at the end, uh, he meets President Truman, and he tells Truman that he feels like he's got blood on his hands and he doesn't know what to. And Truman pulls a handkerchief out of his pocket, and he's just kind of taunting him with it, like, you need a handkerchief, because he's like, you think you're so special, and you think everybody thinks you're the guy that's ended the war and dropped the bomb. I'm the one that dropped the bomb.
Yeah,
Everybody
he's
knows
like,
me as the guy that dropped the bomb. You don't
nobody's
have to.
gonna remember you for it.
Nobody's worried about you,
Yeah.
which is not true,
Mm.
ultimately. But and then there is an interesting. I don't know if I guess the Einstein portrayal was fine. It wasn't like my favorite performance in the whole thing, but I thought it was fine. But there's like kind of the Einstein conversation in this movie that Oppenheimer and Einstein have, is sort of like the spinning top in Inception. Like, it's kind of like the hinge point of this movie that we keep returning to, because it's the first inclination that Robert Downey Jr.'s character Strauss has, um, that Cillian Murphy, that Oppenheimer is sort of like turning against him or something, because he thinks that he said something about him to Einstein that turned Einstein off of him,
Yeah.
and that turns out not to be true. They just had a conversation about. But I thought this was a great scene too. When we find out what they did actually say, it turns out to be a conversation about how they're this is going to turn everyone against you, and it's going to be thankless and everything. But then when you're all one day way down the line, decades from now, they'll give you awards and medals and stuff, and everybody will come shake your hand. But it's not for you; it's for them.
Yeah.
And that's like interspersed with a scene of that actually happening in real life. Oppenheimer's an old man getting these medals and awards, which the old age makeup was like a little,
That was all right.
whatever. It's okay. Uh, but uh, but they're giving out the awards, and Benny Safdie's character, I can't remember the name of the character, but Benny Safdie's character, is one of the ones who was kind of the most later on, like, detrimental to. I don't know. He kind of looked like he was going to be an enemy for a minute there, and
Mhm.
this is like the moment where he's turning around and shaking his hand, and they exchange a glance where it's like a knowing, like, yeah, I know you don't really, you're just here for the optics kind of thing.
Yeah.
So a lot of this movie works super well, and I do highly recommend it. And I don't know. I'm sure there's a bunch of I'm not mentioning here. Help me out here. What else is worth talking about this? There's so much to say.
I mean, we've said a lot. I mean, the big thing, you should go see this movie. I think one of the negatives that I did have, which I don't know if it was just my theater, you kind of touched on it a little bit, was there were times where I was like, what did he just say? And I don't know if it was like the register that Cillian Murphy was speaking in or some of the other people, but I was like, okay, I missed whatever was just said there. And it could have been the music or just like the theater sound system.
We both did see this in fake IMAX, I'm sure, right? I mean, you didn't
Yeah.
actually go to a real IMAX theater.
Mhm.
So there is something to be said about, we can't speak to what it's like if you actually find one of the few theaters that are real IMAX, 70 millimeter IMAX, like Christopher Nolan wants you to go see.
Yeah.
But that's hard to do. But in these theaters, yeah, the speakers are so loud and the mixing, and I think that is a Christopher Nolan thing, though. I think he does kind of tend to want to crank up the volume on the score
Yeah.
and keep the dialogue underneath it a little bit, which is, I think that's a con. I mean,
Sometimes, yeah.
maybe it's a stylistic choice, but I actually had less of a problem with it here than Tenet. But it's a choice. I do love the score, so I'm like mixed about it because I
Mhm.
did love the score here and the sound design and everything. The sound design around the explosion of that bomb
That
is
got me a
great
little bit. Yeah.
because, man, that is so epic because they let it be silent for so long, and you're just hearing breathing and like the movement of seats and things like
Yeah.
or movement of people in seats and stuff like that. So
And then like what he gives the line that Oppenheimer said. What is it?
yeah, I am become death, destroyer of worlds,
And then you just get hit by like the wave, the shock wave, and then
and
it's just
IMAX
so
does make
loud.
that
It's good.
very effective. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I did think that was a cringy. I was going to say this earlier about the Florence Pugh thing, but I like the only time I would say I cringed at this movie was when, um, like they're having sex and she picks a book up off out of the shelf and it's the Bhagavad Gita and it's all written in Sanskrit and she's like, "Oh, you can read Sanskrit?" And he's like, "Whatever." They have a little conversation about it. I don't think she can read Sanskrit. I have no reason to think she can read Sanskrit.
Right.
And she opens up the book and points to a specific part and says, like, "Read this to me," and then mounts him and makes him read the line that she's pointing to, which is "I am become death, destroyer of worlds," which is like the most relevant quote in the world to the situation that's at hand with this guy. And it just seems like if you can't read, not only can you not read, you just open the book to the right page and point to this one part, and it's just a blob of symbols to you, and
Yeah.
it just happens to be like the most relevant quote ever that'll like play an integral role. Like he made that quote famous,
Mhm.
you know. I don't know. It's just that, and the fact that that's tied up with sex, I was just like, what's sexy about any of that? I don't know. That was weird to me.
Yeah,
That
and
was the like standout weirdest moment to me.
but I mean overall I thought it was a really good story and an interesting one. Like I don't who knows how much of it is like super accurate. I'm sure they try to do their best.
It's based on a book about his life too,
Okay,
so
so
it's
yeah.
it's trying to stay to the story of the book. I'm sure more than
And like
necessarily real life, but I'm sure the book has a lot to do with real life too. So
and one of the crazy things that like I knew but like I had probably forgotten is like they at the time they weren't sure if it would cause like a chain reaction and then just destroy Earth's atmosphere.
yeah, just completely ignite the
Just
the atmosphere. Yeah,
but it didn't,
yeah. The
and we
fact that
just
there was
killed
no
a ton of people.
they could have added a little more weight to that, but I liked the scene where he's like giving a speech and he's like in his mind he's seeing these people getting like blown, like he focuses on a woman's face
Mhm.
with like skin being
And
blown
that's when
back and
he's kind of
everything,
feeling the weight of what they had done.
and then he like moves to step, like he steps somewhere and he looks down and he stepped through like a burnt body of someone,
Yeah.
everything. So that's, and I know they ran the risk of, if they did a lot more than that, they run the risk of being like gratuitous and like people saying it's in poor taste or whatever. If you just showed like Hiroshima and Nagasaki getting
Yeah.
bombed, like if you tried to recreate that in a movie, that might be offensive. So to some people,
And they've already done that very well. And I can't remember like there's like an anime from a
yeah. What
Japanese
is
man's
that?
experience. I can't remember what it is. It's not Grave of the Fireflies. There's one that's like specifically that, and
I've
like
seen what you're
it's
talking
and
about
yeah, it's
though.
very intense a scene. But yeah, um,
Yeah,
yeah, I think we both recommend this movie. And
yeah,
what would you give it?
yeah. It's hard. I've been thinking about it. There's things about that I like so much that it pulls it up, from I, I want to give it higher, but I would give it a 7.5.
Oh
Seven and a
wow.
half is where it lands
So
for
yeah,
me.
I liked it a lot. So I'm gonna
Hmm.
go with like a 9, man. I thought it
Yeah,
was a
yeah.
great movie.
It makes sense. I see that most people, the vast majority of people, are right there with you or higher. I mean, a lot
Yeah.
of people are saying this is some of the best cinema, yeah, of the decade or of the 21st century even. Like,
Mhm.
I understand where those people are coming from. And then if somebody said it's crazy, this is the bad thing about, for me reviewing movies is like I can understand why somebody would watch this and say like this is way too long. It's 3 hours long and it's just a bunch of guys talking.
It's
And
all interesting to me though. I mean,
oh yeah,
it's
but like
it's
if somebody said that, if they were like, "Man, that's way too
yeah.
much talking and it's 3 hours long," I'm like, I get
I
where you're coming from. And then if
yeah.
somebody says like this is a masterpiece of modern cinema, it's Christopher Nolan's best, like you have to go see this movie 10 times. If they're just raving about it, I totally get where you're coming from too. And honestly, I wish I could have afforded slash had the time to watch this again before I put out this review. I think I'll need to see this again, and if my mind changes in the future, I'll find a way on the internet to update everyone for what it's worth. Because it might, I think it'll improve for me upon rewatch. And but yeah, right now, 7.5 is the honest answer, and I got to be truthful about it.
Okay. That's fair.
So yeah, Barbie review coming very shortly after this,
Yep.
so won't be long before that. If remember to like this video, please subscribe if you haven't yet. We have more views on these things than subscribers, so it means some of you guys are watching and not clicking that button, and it's free to do it. And yeah, so Barbie coming soon, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching as always. Appreciate you.
Yeah, we'll see. And leave any comments down below about the movie if you enjoyed it or not, and what other Christopher Nolan movies you enjoy. All right.
Absolutely.
See ya.